Welcome back. I know many of you love listening to these stories to fall asleep. If you enjoy them, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there, I'd love to hear from you. Now, get comfy and enjoy the story. For 13 years, a mother grieved for her beloved daughter who disappeared without a trace, never knowing what truly happened to her. While the police investigation went cold and hope seemed lost, she never stopped searching for answers about her little girl's disappearance. But one morning, as she scrolled through Facebook, she stumbled upon a post from her neighbor. What she saw in that photo made her entire body tremble in horror. What happened to the little girl 13 years ago? And how could a simple Facebook post change everything? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Amelia Vance's Saturday morning began slowly, a peaceful respite from the usual work-week hustle. The soft light of morning filtered through the kitchen windows of the Vance household in Cedar Creek, Georgia. She moved about, preparing breakfast for herself and her still-sleeping husband, Liam. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the sizzle of a warming pan on the stove. As she waited for the coffee to finish and the pan to heat up for pancakes, Amelia absent-mindedly checked her phone for messages. Her eyes caught on the date displayed, August 8th, 2025. In an instant, the tranquil morning shattered. The spatula slipped from her grasp, clattering against the counter as realization struck her like a physical blow. 13 years. It had been 13 years to the day since their daughter disappeared. Amelia's breath hitched, her chest constricting with a familiar pain. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as memories flooded back, unbidden and overwhelming. With trembling hands, she switched off the stove, abandoning the half-mixed pancake batter. The coffee maker beeped its completion, but the sound barely registered. Instead, Amelia found herself drawn upstairs, her feet moving of their own accord. She paused before a closed door across from the master bedroom, where Liam still slept, unaware of the emotional storm brewing within his wife. Taking a deep breath, Amelia turned the handle and stepped inside. The room that greeted her was a time capsule, preserved in a state of perpetual waiting. Pink-painted walls, now slightly faded, surrounded her. Girly furniture, a toy house, stuffed animals, and Barbie dolls sat in silent vigil. The Hello Kitty bed, with its distinctive headboard, dominated the space. A thin layer of dust, a testament to the passage of time. Amelia inhaled deeply, the musty air carrying notes of nostalgia and heartache. She moved to the window, drawing back the curtains and lifting the sash to let in fresh air and sunlight. The room seemed to exhale, releasing years of stagnant memories. Next, she turned her attention to the wardrobe. Opening it released a wave of musty air, revealing clothes that hadn't been worn in over a decade. Bright colors had dulled, and some items bore the telltale stains of mold and mildew. With care, Amelia began removing the garments, placing them in a nearby laundry basket. It was a ritual she performed every year on this date, a way of keeping her daughter's memory alive and tended. As she worked, Amelia's eyes were drawn to the wall adorned with photographs. They surrounded a large printed wall sticker that spelled out Lily in cheerful, cloud-patterned letters. Each image was a snapshot of a life interrupted, frozen in time. Lily's first steps, her first day of preschool, family picnics in the park. Amelia found herself smiling despite the ache in her heart as she recalled the day they had decorated this room. It had been a time of hope and plans for the future. Lily was nearly 4, and they had been discussing the possibility of giving her a sibling. The move from the nursery to this big girl room had been a celebration, a milestone marked with love and laughter as she continued her cleaning. Amelia's gaze fell on a camera sitting on the dressing table, forgotten there since her last annual visit. Amelia picked it up, switching it on only to find the battery dead. Determined, she searched the wardrobe for the camera box, locating the adapter and plugging it into a nearby socket. While the camera charged, Amelia gathered the laundry basket and made her way downstairs to the laundry room. She loaded the clothes into the washing machine, carefully selecting the baby detergent and softener she always kept on hand for this purpose. The familiar scent wafted up, bringing with it a fresh wave of memories. As the washing machine hummed to life, Amelia leaned against it for a moment, allowing herself to feel the full weight of the day. 13 years had passed, but the pain remained as fresh as ever. With a deep breath, she straightened up and headed back upstairs. Amelia climbed the stairs once more. She carried with her the weight of 13 years of grief, but also the unquenchable spark of a mother's love that refused to be extinguished. As Amelia re-entered Lily's room, the floorboards creaked beneath her feet, a familiar sound that echoed through the years. She paused in the doorway, her hand resting on the worn wooden frame, and took in the scene before her. The dust motes danced in the sunbeams that now streamed through the open window, giving the room an almost ethereal quality. Her moment of solitude was interrupted by the sound of footsteps. Liam appeared at the door, his hair tousled from sleep, his eyes still heavy with the remnants of dreams. He wore an old t-shirt and pajama bottoms, a stark contrast to his usual polished appearance. As his gaze met Amelia's, a silent understanding passed between them. No words were needed. They both knew the significance of this day. "Are you okay?" Liam asked softly, pulling Amelia into a gentle embrace. His voice was low and gravelly, still thick with sleep. Amelia leaned into his warmth, drawing strength from his presence. The familiar scent of his aftershave mingled with the musty air of the room, grounding her in the present moment. "It's never easy," she murmured, her voice muffled against his chest. "Even after all this time, not knowing where she is." Liam nodded, his chin resting atop her head. His arms tightened around her, a physical manifestation of his desire to protect her from the pain that this day always brought. "I know, honey, I know," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "I love you, and I don't mind you doing this every year. But maybe it's time we start thinking about moving on." Amelia pulled back slightly, her eyes searching his face. The lines around Liam's eyes seemed deeper today, etched with the weight of years of worry and grief. "But Lily deserves this, Liam," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know if she's..." She couldn't bring herself to finish the thought. "If she's in heaven looking down on us, she'd be happy to see we haven't forgotten her." Liam took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling beneath Amelia's hands. She could see the internal struggle playing out across his features. Liam had always been the logical one, the pragmatist to her dreamer. He wasn't one for belief in the supernatural or the sentimental, but they had been married long enough to respect each other's ways of coping with the unimaginable loss they had suffered. "I know you don't believe in that sort of thing, Amelia," continued, her voice soft but firm. Her fingers absently traced the worn cotton of his t-shirt, a nervous habit she had developed over the years. "But I can't just abandon this room, abandon her memory." Liam's shoulders sagged slightly, but he nodded. "I understand," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. I worry about you, about us. It's been 13 years, Amelia. I don't want this grief to consume you." Amelia reached out, taking his hand in hers. His palm was warm and calloused, a testament to the years of work he had poured into their home, into building a life together. "I know you're trying to protect me," she said, "but this helps. It keeps her alive in my heart." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft beep from the camera, signaling it had charged enough to power on. Amelia moved to the bed, sitting down on the Hello Kitty comforter. A small cloud of dust rose around her, catching the sunlight and creating a momentary halo effect. Liam followed, settling beside her as she switched on the device. Together, they scrolled through the gallery, each image a bittersweet reminder of happier times. The digital screen flickered with snapshots of birthdays, Christmases, ordinary days made extraordinary by the presence of their daughter. Amelia's finger hovered over each image as if she could reach through the screen and touch the moments captured there. Then they came across a photo that made Amelia's breath catch in her throat. It was a selfie taken the day before Lily disappeared. On her 4th birthday. They were just cuddling in bed that morning, mother and daughter, faces pressed close together, both beaming at the camera. It was a moment of pure joy, frozen in time, unaware of the tragedy that loomed. The sight was too much for Amelia. She burst into tears, the camera slipping from her grasp. Liam caught it, setting it aside before wrapping his arms around his wife. He held her as she sobbed, her body shaking with the force of her grief. The sound of her cries echoed in the quiet room, a raw expression of pain that had been held at bay for too long. After several long moments, Liam gently suggested they leave the room. He kept the camera plugged into the adapter, leaving it on the bedside table, and guided Amelia out. As they descended the stairs, the sight of abandoned breakfast preparations hit them, a stark reminder of how quickly their peaceful morning had unraveled. In the living room, Amelia settled on the couch, trying to compose herself. The familiar surroundings, the family photos on the walls, the throw pillows Lily had loved to build forts with both comforted and pained her. Liam, ever practical, returned to the kitchen. "Let me handle the breakfast," he said. "Just take your time and don't worry about anything else." He reheated the pan and finished making the pancakes Amelia had started. The familiar domestic sounds, the sizzle of batter hitting the pan, the gentle clink of plates being set out provided a comforting backdrop. Liam even put on some calm morning jazz through the Bluetooth speaker, the soft melodies helping to soothe the charged atmosphere. Slowly, Amelia felt herself coming back to the present, the overwhelming emotions of earlier receding to a more manageable level. She joined Liam in the kitchen, pouring them both cups of coffee. The warm mug felt good in her hands, giving her something tangible to focus on. As they sipped, they began to discuss plans for the weekend. Liam mentioned he had nothing particular in mind after 2 hectic weeks at work. Maybe he'd wash his bike or tend to the backyard. Amelia nodded, agreeing that a quiet weekend at home sounded perfect. She wanted to feel close to Lily, and she already had plans to continue cleaning her room, wiping down toys and furniture, washing bedding. As Liam finished cooking, Amelia helped carry the plates to the dining table, arranging a small selection of condiments alongside. They settled into a companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts as they ate. Liam scrolled through his phone, while Amelia picked up her tablet, absently browsed Facebook as she nibbled on her pancakes. Suddenly, something caught Amelia's eye. She scrolled back, focusing on a post that had almost slipped by unnoticed. It was from Julian Croft, their old next-door neighbor. Amelia blinked in surprise, wondering why his post had appeared on her feed after so many years. Memories flooded back. Backyard BBQs, friendly chats over the fence. The kindness Julian and his wife Clara had always shown. Then came the recollection of their sudden departure, forced to sell their house due to financial difficulties. It had happened not long after Lily's disappearance, adding another layer of change and loss to an already difficult time. Amelia stared at the post, a strange feeling settling in her stomach. She glanced up at Liam, considering whether to mention it, but noticing he was engrossed in his own video, she chose to stay quiet. Instead, she finished her breakfast in thoughtful silence, her mind churning with unexpected memories and a nagging sense that something significant had just occurred. The rest of the morning passed in a haze of routine tasks and unspoken emotions. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting shorter shadows across the kitchen floor, Amelia found herself drawn back to the mysteries of the past, unaware that her world was about to be turned upside down once again. The gentle hum of the washing machine faded, followed by a series of beeps, signaling the end of the 30-minute cycle. Amelia headed to the laundry room to retrieve the clean clothes, then made her way to the backyard, the basket balanced on her hip. The late morning sun pressed down on her, its warmth sharply contrasting the cold heaviness in her heart. She began the routine task of hanging up Lily's clothes. Each tiny garment, with the scent of baby detergent, was a bittersweet reminder of the daughter they had lost. As she pinned a tiny sundress to the line, a bead of sweat trickled down her temple. The heat was oppressive, matching the heaviness. In her chest, Amelia paused, wiping her brow with the back of her hand, and gazed at the neat row of clothes fluttering in the breeze. It was a scene of domestic normalcy that felt jarringly out of place on this day of remembrance and grief. Amelia turned back towards the house after she finished her task. Through the kitchen window, she caught a glimpse of Liam wheeling his bike out to the front of the house. The sight of him going about his normal Saturday routine stirred something in her, a mix of gratitude for his steady presence and a twinge of resentment that he seemed able to move forward in ways she couldn't. For a moment, Amelia considered returning upstairs to continue her annual cleaning of Lily's room, but the memory of Julian Croft's Facebook post nagged at her, piquing her curiosity about their old neighbour's house. It had been years since she'd really looked at it, usually just passing by without a second glance. Deciding to indulge her curiosity, Amelia stepped outside. The concrete of the driveway was hot beneath her bare feet as she approached Liam, who was gathering supplies to wash his bike. "Hey," she said, shielding her eyes from the sun. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, too casual for the emotional turmoil churning inside her. "Have you ever paid much attention to Julian and Clara's old place next door?" Liam looked up from his task, a slight frown creasing his brow. A smudge of grease marked his cheek, a remnant from his earlier tinkering with the bike's gears. "Not really," he replied, his tone cautious. He seemed to be gauging her mood, aware of how fragile the day's peace was. "Last I heard, it had been turned into an Airbnb villa or something like that." Intrigued, Amelia walked to the edge of their property, peering at the house next door. The once familiar facade now seemed alien to her, its windows blank and uninviting. As she watched, a couple emerged, luggage in tow. A taxi waited in the driveway, engine idling. The sight stirred a mix of emotions in Amelia: nostalgia for the days when they'd known their neighbours, sadness at the loss of community, and a strange sense of unease she couldn't quite place. She offered a polite smile to the departing couple. When they noticed her, then turned back towards her own home as she approached Liam again. She shared her thoughts about the property's transformation and the loss of their old neighbours. Liam nodded in agreement, but his expression turned curious. He set down the sponge he'd been holding, giving Amelia his full attention. "What brought this on?" he asked, his voice gentle but probing. "Why this sudden interest in the old place?" Amelia hesitated for a moment before responding. The words felt heavy on her tongue, laden with implications she wasn't sure she was ready to face. "Do you remember Julian, Clara's husband? I just saw a post from him on Facebook." She paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, "They seem happy now. It looks like they have a daughter." The effect of her words was immediate and startling. Liam's face scrunched in confusion, his brow furrowing deeply. "The Croft family? Are we talking about the same people?" He shook his head slightly, as if trying to dislodge a persistent thought. "I could have sworn the husband was infertile." "Seriously, you're sure about that?" Amelia asked. "Yeah," Liam replied. "I clearly remember him telling me himself. They went to the clinic, and got the diagnosis. At his words, Amelia froze, her mind racing. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as possibilities she'd never considered suddenly presented themselves. The gentle breeze that had been cooling her sun-warmed skin now felt icy against her flesh. Without a word, she turned and rushed back into the house, leaving a bewildered Liam calling after her, "Are you okay, honey?" Inside, the cool air of the house hit her like a physical force. Amelia made a beeline for the living room, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. She snatched up her tablet from where she'd left it on the sofa, her fingers trembling as she navigated back to Facebook. The cheerful interface seemed to mock her as she scrolled frantically, searching for Julian's post. When she found it again, Amelia felt as though all the air had been sucked from the room. This time, she zoomed in, the photo focused intently. On the image of the girl, studying every detail, the slope of her nose, the curve of her smile, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners, all achingly familiar. The tablet slipped from her grasp, landing on the carpeted floor as the implications of what she was seeing hit her full force. Liam, who had followed her inside, picked up the device and looked at the screen. His eyes widened as he took in the picture of Julian and the young girl. "I know what you're thinking," Liam said slowly, his voice a mix of concern and disbelief. "But you can't possibly believe. I mean, they could have adopted, or maybe it's a relative staying with them." Amelia sank onto the sofa, her mind whirling. The familiar comfort of the cushions felt wrong, somehow, as if her entire world had shifted. "Liam," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "why would a man his age adopt a child? And look at her. She has the same blonde hair as our Lily. Don't you think it's strange that they sold their house just months after she disappeared? It's too many coincidences." Liam sat beside her, still holding the tablet. He navigated to Julian's profile page, frowning as he scrolled. The blue light from the screen cast strange shadows across his face, deepening the lines of worry etched there. "There are no pictures of Clara," he noted, his voice tight with suppressed emotion, "and his relationship status. He's not listed as married anymore." Amelia leaned in, her heart pounding so hard she was sure Liam must be able to hear it. Her eyes darted across the screen, taking in every detail. "See," she said, her voice rising with a mix of excitement and fear. "It all fits, Liam, I think. I think that might be our daughter." The weight of her words hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and terror. Liam's brow was furrowed, his eyes fixed on the tablet screen, as if staring at it long. Enough might reveal some hidden truth. Amelia, by contrast, seemed almost feverish with nervous energy, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt as her mind raced with possibilities. "Amelia," Liam began, his voice low and measured, "I know today is difficult for you, but we need to think about this rationally. There could be 100 explanations for this that don't involve what you're suggesting." Amelia turned to face him, her eyes bright with a mixture of hope and desperation. "But look at her, Liam," she insisted, pointing at the screen with a trembling finger. "Really look. Doesn't she remind you of Lily? The same blonde hair, the same smile." Liam sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. The gesture, so familiar to Amelia after years of marriage, spoke volumes about his inner turmoil. "I know you want to believe this," he said gently, "but we can't just accuse someone of kidnapping based on a Facebook photo. It's been 13 years. Our minds can play tricks on us, especially when we're grieving." But Amelia wasn't listening. Her focus had zeroed in on a detail in Julian's profile, a piece of information that seemed to make everything fall into place. "Look," she said, tapping the screen emphatically. "It says he lives in North Carolina now. That's not far from here. We could—" "No," Liam said firmly, cutting her off. His voice was sharper than he intended, and he saw Amelia flinch slightly at his tone. Softening, he continued, "Absolutely not. We are not going to North Carolina based on a hunch. Think about what you're suggesting. We can't just show up at someone's house and accuse them of kidnapping our daughter. Plus, we don't know where he actually lives." Amelia stood up abruptly. Unable to contain her restless energy any longer, she began pacing the room, her bare feet silent on the plush carpet. The familiar surroundings of their living room, the family photos on the walls, the worn but comfortable furniture, suddenly felt alien, as if she was seeing it all through new eyes. "But what if it is her, Liam?" she asked, her voice cracking with emotion. "What if our daughter has been living just a few hours away all this time? Don't you think we owe it to her to at least check?" Liam set the tablet down on the coffee table, his movements deliberate and controlled. When he spoke, his voice was pained. "Amelia, please. I know you want to believe this, but we've been down this road before. Remember all the false leads over. The years, the psychics, the sightings. Each time, it nearly broke you when it turned out to be nothing." Amelia stopped pacing, turning to face her husband. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows cast half her face in shadow, highlighting the tears that had begun to form in her eyes. "This is different," she insisted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can feel it. We have to at least try. If it's not her, fine. But if there's even a chance." Liam stood up, crossing the room to stand before his wife. He placed his hands on her shoulders, his touch gentle but firm. "No, Amelia, I'm not letting you do this to yourself again. We can't keep dwelling on the past. It's not healthy." He paused, searching her face, his voice softening but still firm. "Listen to yourself. You sound—" He hesitated but pushed the words out anyway. "Crazy. Yeah, what you're thinking. That Lily is with Julian. It's completely crazy. There." Voices began to rise as the argument intensified. Amelia accused Liam of not caring enough, of giving up on their daughter. Liam countered that he was trying to protect Amelia from another heartbreak, that they needed to move on with their lives. The words flew between them like physical blows, years of pent-up grief and frustration finding release in this moment of conflict. Finally, Liam threw his hands up in frustration. "I can't do this right now. I told you I wanted to stay home and have a relaxing time," he said, his voice tense with suppressed emotion. "I'm going to the store. We need groceries. And I need some air. When I get back, I want this conversation done. No more talk about Lily. No more wild ideas. It's time to lock that room and move on." Without waiting for a response, Liam grabbed his keys from the hook by the door and headed out. The sound of the front door closing behind him echoed through the house, leaving a silence that seemed to ring in Amelia's ears. She stood there for a long moment, tears streaming down her face, feeling more alone than she had in years. The house, usually a source of comfort, now felt oppressive, filled with the ghosts of what might have been. Amelia's gaze drifted to the stairs leading up to Lily's room. She thought of the camera up there, filled with photos of her daughter. If she could just compare them. Before she could talk herself out of it, Amelia was on her feet, climbing the stairs 2 at a time. She burst into Lily's room, her eyes immediately landing on the camera still sitting on the bedside table. She snatched it up, along with her purse and car keys from her own bedroom across the hall. Heart pounding, Amelia rushed back downstairs and out to her car. She knew what Liam would say if he were here, knew he would try to stop her, but she couldn't let this go, not without being sure. As she started the engine and backed out of the driveway, Amelia's mind was made up. She was going to the police station. They had to listen to her this time. They had to see what she saw. The familiar streets of their neighborhood blurred past as Amelia drove, her mind racing faster than her car. She was vaguely aware that she was probably speeding, but she couldn't bring herself to care. Every second felt crucial, as if the truth she sought might slip away if she didn't act quickly enough. As she approached the police station, Amelia felt a mixture of determination and fear. She had been here so many times over the years, each visit filled with hope that quickly turned to disappointment. But this time would be different. It had to be. She parked her car haphazardly, barely remembering to lock it as she rushed towards the entrance of the station. The weight of the camera in her hand felt like a lifeline, a tangible connection to the daughter she had lost and the hope she now clung to so desperately. Taking a deep breath, Amelia pushed open the door and stepped into the station, ready to fight for the chance to bring her daughter home. The cool, air-conditioned interior washed over her, a stark contrast to the heat of the day and the fire of determination burning within her. As the door swung shut behind her, Amelia felt as though she were crossing a threshold, not just into the building, but into a new chapter of her life, one that could either heal the wounds of the past or tear them open anew. Amelia approached the front desk, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure the young officer behind the counter must be able to hear it. The nameplate on his uniform read Officer Leo Vance. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Officer Vance asked, his voice polite but disinterested. Amelia took a deep breath, willing her voice to remain steady. "My name is Amelia Hayes," she began, her words coming out in a rush. "I need to speak with Officer Maya Singh. She's been assigned to my daughter's case, Lily Hayes." Officer Vance's fingers moved across his keyboard, the clicking sounds seeming unnaturally loud in the quiet reception area. His brow furrowed slightly as he read the information on his screen. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hayes, but it looks like that case was closed some time ago." "Please," Amelia insisted, leaning forward slightly, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. "It's important. I have new information." The desperation in her voice must have been evident, because Officer Vance's expression softened slightly. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right, Mrs. Hayes. Please have a seat in the waiting room. I'll see if Officer Singh is available." Amelia murmured her thanks and made her way to the small, sterile waiting area. The plastic chairs were uncomfortable, but she barely noticed as she perched on the edge of one, her entire body tense with anticipation. The camera sat heavy in her lap, a tangible link to the past and, she hoped, a key to unlocking the future. Time seemed to crawl as Amelia waited, her anxiety growing with each passing minute. She kept glancing at the door, hoping to see the familiar face of Officer Singh, the woman who had been a constant presence in their lives during those first terrible months after Lily's disappearance. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only about 15 minutes, the door opened. Officer Maya Singh stepped in, her face a mask of professional concern. She looked older than Amelia remembered, with streaks of grey in her dark hair and new lines around her eyes, but her gaze was as sharp and assessing as ever. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, her voice gentle but guarded. "I understand you have some new information for us." Amelia stood up, her legs feeling unsteady beneath her. This was it. This was her chance to make them understand, to finally bring Lily home. She clutched the camera to her chest, like a lifeline, as Officer Singh settled into a chair across from her, notepad at the ready. Taking a deep breath, Amelia began to explain everything. The Facebook post, the similarities she saw in the girl, the coincidences that seemed too significant to ignore. Her words tumbled out in a rush, punctuated by sharp intakes of breath, as she struggled to convey the importance of what she had discovered. She showed Officer Singh the Facebook image on her phone and some of Lily's childhood pictures from the camera she had brought. But as she spoke, she could see the skepticism growing in Officer Singh's eyes. The look was all too familiar, a mixture of pity and exasperation that Amelia had seen countless times over the years. When Amelia finished, Officer Singh let out a small sigh. "Mrs. Hayes," she said gently, her tone reminiscent of someone speaking. To a child, I understand today is a difficult day for you. The anniversary of Lily's disappearance must bring up a lot of emotions. Amelia felt her heart sink, a cold weight settling in her stomach. But Officer Singh, please, she pleaded, her voice cracking. Just look at the pictures. Can't you see the resemblance? Officer Singh's expression softened further, but there was a firmness in her voice when she spoke. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hayes. What you're telling me, it sounds just as far-fetched as all the other leads and proofs you've brought us over the years, and we both know how those turned out. Amelia felt tears of frustration welling in her eyes. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold them back. But this time it's different, she insisted, her voice barely above a whisper. Please, Officer Singh, at least consider looking into it when you have time. Officer Singh stood up, her manner sympathetic but resolute. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hayes, but I have other, more pressing cases to attend to. We can't just reopen an investigation and contact another state's department based on a social media post. It could cause a lot of trouble, even for me personally. Amelia felt the last of her hope draining away. She stood up, her legs feeling weak and unsteady. I understand, she said quietly, even though she didn't, not really. The weight of disappointment was crushing, familiar yet no less painful for its familiarity. As Officer Singh escorted her out of the station, she added, Please, Mrs. Hayes, only come back if you have solid, tangible proof. We want to help, but we need more than hunches and resemblances. Amelia nodded numbly, making her way back to her car. The afternoon sun was blinding after the dim interior of the police station, and she had to shield her eyes as she fumbled with her keys. As she sat behind the wheel, she felt a wave of despair wash over her. She had been so sure, so certain that this time would be different. But once again, she found herself alone with her suspicions, with no one willing to listen. The drive home was a blur, muscle memory guiding her through familiar streets as her mind churned with conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to give up, to accept that maybe Liam was right, that it was time to move on. But a larger part, the part that had kept her going for 13 long years, refused to let go of this new thread of hope, no matter how tenuous, as she pulled into her driveway. Amelia's heart sank further. Liam's bike was already parked, meaning he had returned from his grocery run. She sat in the car for a moment, gathering her courage for the confrontation she knew was waiting for her inside. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the car and made her way to the front door. As she entered, she found Liam waiting for her in the living room. His expression was a mix of anger and concern, his posture tense as he stood with his arms crossed over his chest. Where were you? He asked, his voice tight with barely contained emotion. Amelia hesitated, then decided honesty was the best policy. I went to the police station, she admitted quietly, her voice small in the charged atmosphere of the room. Liam's face darkened, a storm of emotions playing across his features. You did what? He exclaimed, his voice rising. Amelia, what were you thinking? We talked about this. And so began another heated exchange, the air between them crackling with tension and unspoken fears. As the argument unfolded, Amelia felt as though she was standing on the edge of a precipice, with the life she knew on one side and the unknown, terrifying yet full of possibility, on the other. I had to, Liam, Amelia pleaded, her voice cracking, with the strain of holding back tears. I couldn't just ignore it. What if it really is Lily? Liam ran his hands through his hair in frustration, a gesture so familiar it made Amelia's heart ache despite the tension between them. This has to stop, he said firmly, his tone a mixture of anger and concern. I've tried to understand. I've accepted your yearly ritual of opening up the room, cleaning, honoring her memory. But this, This is consuming you, Amelia. We can't live like this forever. Amelia took a step forward, her hands outstretched in a pleading gesture. Please, Liam, she begged, her eyes searching his face for any sign of understanding. Just this one last time. Help me find Julian. Let me talk to this girl, see her for myself. If it's not Lily, I promise, I'll let it go. I'll lock the room for good. Liam looked at her for a long moment, his expression softening slightly at the desperation in her voice. The ticking of the clock on the mantel seemed unnaturally loud in the tense silence. Finally, he sighed heavily, his shoulders sagging as if under an invisible weight. This is the last time, Amelia, he said, his voice low and serious. If this leads to nothing again, and I'm almost certain it will, you have to promise me you'll stop. We'll pack up Lily's things, remake the room. I need a home office, anyway. Amelia flinched at the thought of Lily's room being dismantled, turned into something so mundane as an office. The idea felt like a betrayal, a final admission of defeat. But she knew this was her only chance. I promise, she whispered, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. Liam nodded, then held out his hand for the tablet. Let me see that photo again, he said, his tone businesslike, as if approaching a problem at work rather than a deeply personal and emotional issue. They sat at the dining table, the polished wood surface reflecting the warm glow of the setting. Son, the tablet between them seemed like a portal to another world, one where their daughter might still be within reach. Liam navigated to the Facebook post, his fingers moving deftly across the screen. Look, he said, pointing to the timestamp. It was uploaded just this morning, around 8 a.m. His eyes scanned the information accompanying the photo, and here it's geotagged. Ocean Isle, North Carolina. That's only about a 2-hour drive. From here, Amelia felt a surge of hope, her heart racing at this new information. We could go there, she said, trying to keep the excitement out of her voice. It's not far. We could be there before dark. Liam hesitated, clearly torn between his desire to protect Amelia from another disappointment and his own curiosity. His eyes flicked between the photos on the screen and Amelia's hopeful face. Finally, he nodded, the motion almost imperceptible. All right, he said, his voice heavy with resignation. But we do this my way. No accusations, no confrontations. We'll try to make contact, see if we can arrange a meeting. That's it, Amelia agreed eagerly, relief flooding through her. She rushed to gather what they might need. Her purse, the camera with Lily's photos, a light jacket in case the evening turned cool. Liam watched her with a mixture of concern and affection, his own movements more measured as he collected his wallet and keys. As they stepped out onto the porch, locking the door behind them, Amelia paused. The familiar view of their neighborhood, neatly trimmed lawns, the children's bikes left carelessly on driveways, suddenly seemed alien. She felt as if she were leaving not just their house, but the life they had built in the aftermath of Lily's disappearance. Liam placed a gentle hand on her lower back, guiding her towards the car. Are you sure about this? He asked softly, giving her one last chance to back out. Amelia took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of freshly cut grass and the faint aroma of someone's barbecue. I'm sure, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. We have to know. They climbed into the car, the familiar leather seats creaking. Slightly as they settled in, as Liam started the engine, Amelia clutched her purse to her chest, feeling the hard outline of the camera inside. It was a tangible link to the past, to the daughter they had lost. The drive to North Carolina stretched before them like an endless ribbon of asphalt. The landscape gradually changing from the familiar suburbs of Cedar Creek to the lush greenery of the coast. Inside the car, the tension was palpable. Liam's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw set in a tight line that spoke volumes about his inner turmoil. Amelia sat beside him, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her shirt, her eyes fixed on the horizon as if she could will their destination into view. The silence between them was broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional directions from the GPS. As they crossed the state line into North Carolina, Liam cleared his throat, breaking the stillness that had settled over them. "We should call Julian," he said, his voice startling in the quiet car. "Let him know we're in the area. Maybe we could arrange to meet for dinner." Amelia's head snapped towards him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "I don't know, Liam," she said hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What? If he gets suspicious and disappears?" Liam shook his head, his expression a mixture of determination and resignation. "We had a good relationship with Julian, remember? It would be natural for us to reach out if we're visiting North Carolina. Plus, it's the quickest way to meet him and the girl properly." Amelia saw the logic in his argument, but fear still gnawed at her. What if this was their only chance and they blew it? But Liam was insistent. "Make the call, Amelia," he said firmly. "I told you, if we're going to do this, we're doing it right." With shaking hands, Amelia pulled out her phone and dialed the last number she had for Julian. The phone rang and rang, but there was no answer. The cheerful voicemail message felt like a mockery of their tense situation. She tried sending a Facebook message, but it remained unread, the little checkmark stubbornly grey. "He's not picking up," Amelia said, a mix of relief and frustration in her voice. "The message hasn't been read either." Liam frowned, his brow furrowing deeper. "All right then, we stick with the original plan. We'll go to the beach where the photo was taken and find the water ski rental shop. See if we can find them, or any information about them." As they neared their destination, Amelia's anxiety grew. The sun had begun its descent from the zenith, casting the sky in gentler shades. What if they were too late? What if they arrived and found no lead? But as they pulled into the parking lot of the water ski rental shop, she saw something that made her heart skip a beat. The exact same blue waterboard from the Facebook photo. They approached the shop, where a friendly-looking man with sun-weathered skin greeted them. Liam took the lead, his voice carefully casual. "Hi there. We're looking for a friend of ours, Julian. He was here earlier today, this morning, with his daughter." The shop owner's face lit up with recognition. "Oh yes, Julian and Lily. We know them well. They're regulars here, actually. Have a yearly membership with us." He paused, looking at them curiously. "Are you family?" Amelia's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. Lily, he had called the girl Lily. She stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. "Yes, we're distant relatives. We've been trying to reconnect after losing touch. We saw they were here and thought we'd surprise them with a visit. Do you happen to have an address for them?" The shop owner paused briefly, then offered a friendly smile. "Well, we usually don't share that kind of information, but since you're family," he jotted down an address on a scrap of paper and handed it over. "They live in a nice little neighborhood not too far from here. It's a close-knit community, so if you get lost, just ask around. Lily's quite the water skier, you know. Won the community tournament just last month." "Thank you, Liam," said, taking the piece of paper with a grateful nod. "They'll be thrilled and surprised to see we've come." Amelia felt dizzy with the rush of information. As they walked back to their car, she could barely contain herself. "Liam," she whispered urgently, "did you hear that? He called her Lily. It has to be her. It has to be." Liam's face was a mask of conflicting emotions. Hope warring with skepticism, excitement with fear. "Let's not jump to conclusions," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We need to approach this carefully." They drove to the address they'd been given, parking a short distance away from the house. It seemed quiet, no signs of life visible. From the outside, they sat in the car, watching and waiting, the tension growing with each passing minute. Just as Amelia was about to suggest they knock on the door, a car pulled into the driveway. They watched as Julian got out, followed by a young girl carrying a gym bag. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. The girl's movements, the way she bounced as she walked. It was so familiar, so achingly like the daughter she remembered. Tears sprang to Amelia's eyes. "Oh my God, Liam," she whispered. "It's her. It's really her. What do we do? I don't know if I can handle this. Liam, please." Liam, too, seemed overwhelmed. Seeing the girl in person, so close yet still just out of reach, hit him harder than he'd expected. There she was, their daughter. She wasn't the little girl with pigtails anymore, but a young woman growing up before their eyes. Still, he forced himself to think rationally. "We need to stay calm," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We can't just rush in there. We need to do this the right way, or we might scare her off." But even as they discussed their next move, they saw Julian and the girl emerge from the house again, heading back to their car. Panic seized Amelia. What if they left? What if this was their only chance? Before Liam could stop her, Amelia was out of the car, running towards Julian and the girl. "Wait," she called out. "Please, wait." Liam cursed under his breath, quickly dialing 911 as he got out of the car. He explained the situation as best he could to the dispatcher, who advised them to stay put and not approach until the police arrived. But it was too late. Amelia was already halfway to Julian's car. Julian looked up at the sound of Amelia's voice, recognition and then shock crossing his face. Without a word, he quickly ushered the girl into the car, locking the doors. The girl looked confused, asking Julian something that Amelia couldn't hear. Liam caught up to Amelia just as Julian was trying to start the car. In a split-second decision, Liam positioned himself in front of the vehicle, preventing them from driving away. The four of them locked eyes, Amelia and Liam, desperate and determined. Julian, panicked and cornered, and the girl, bewildered and frightened. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, in the distance, they heard the wail of approaching police sirens. Julian's face contorted with fear and anger. He flung open the car door and bolted, leaving the girl behind. Liam, running on pure adrenaline, took off after Julian. He tackled him to the ground just as the first police car rounded the corner, pinning Julian down. Liam's voice was a growl of rage and pain. "What did you do to my daughter, you monster?" The quiet suburban street erupted into chaos as 4 police cars screeched to a halt, their sirens wailing and lights flashing. 2 of the vehicles parked strategically around the spot where Liam had tackled Julian to the ground. The officers swiftly exited their cars, their movements precise and practiced. "Separate them," shouted the lead officer, his voice cutting through the commotion. 2 officers gently but firmly pulled Liam off Julian, while another pair helped Julian to his feet. The tension in the air was palpable as the 2 men, both breathing heavily, were held apart. "What's going on here?" demanded the lead officer, his eyes darting between Liam and Julian. Liam, still catching his breath, spoke up first. "I'm the one who made the 911 call. That man," he pointed at Julian, "kidnapped our daughter 13 years ago." As the officers began to process this information, Amelia approached the scene, her heart pounding. She made her way to Julian's car, where Lily still sat, looking terrified and confused. Amelia opened the door, her hand trembling as she reached out to her long-lost daughter. "Lily, sweetheart, it's okay. You can come out now," Amelia said. Softly, her voice choked with emotion. "It's me. It's Mum." But Lily shrank back, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. She refused to take Amelia's hand, not recognizing the woman who claimed to be her mother. "I don't know you. Where's my dad? What's happening?" she said. Amelia's heart broke at the fear in her daughter's voice, but she forced herself to stay calm. "It's okay, sweetie," she said. "Everything's going to be okay. We're here to help you." As another officer approached her and assured her that there would be an explanation for all this, Lily hesitantly stepped out of the car, keeping her distance. From Amelia, Liam turned to address the officers and everyone present. His voice was steady but filled with years of pent-up anguish. "Our daughter, Lily, has been missing for 13 years. We've had an open case all this time, but it went cold. Today, we found evidence that led us here." Julian, still held by the officers, shouted in protest. "They're lying. They're stalkers, trying to kidnap my daughter." Lily, hearing this, stepped forward. Her voice was small but determined as she defended the man she believed to be her father. "He's telling the truth. I've been living with him for 13 years. He adopted me after my parents died in a car accident." Amelia gasped, her face paling at Lily's words. "What car accident?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We never had an accident. We were at an event that evening. We had hired a nanny to watch Lily. When we came home, both the nanny and Lily were gone." As Amelia explained about the investigation into the nanny, who later confessed to falling asleep on the job, Lily's face contorted with confusion and disbelief. "No, you've got it all wrong," Lily insisted, shaking her head vehemently. "I'm not your daughter." But Amelia, driven by a mother's desperation, reached into her bag and pulled out the camera. With shaking hands, she turned it on and showed Lily the screen. "Look, sweetheart. These are your childhood photos." Lily's eyes widened as she saw the images. There she was, a 4-year-old girl with blonde curls, sitting on the Hello Kitty bed she remembered from her earliest memories. She recognized her own childhood face, having seen similar photos in Julian's possession. But how? Lily stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. The revelation hit Lily like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, her world tilting on its axis. Through her tears, she turned to Julian, her voice breaking as she pleaded, "Tell me the truth. If you ever loved me, tell me what really happened." Julian's shoulders sagged, the fight leaving him as he looked at the girl he had raised as his own. With a remorseful expression, he began to speak, his voice low and filled with shame. "Lily, we were your neighbors. Clara and we couldn't have children of our own. We watched you playing in your yard every day, so happy, so full of life. We were close to your parents, they trusted us. That night, when they were out, they asked us to check on you and the nanny." As Julian continued his confession, detailing how they had drugged the nanny and taken Lily, the color drained from everyone's faces. He explained how Clara had left after a year, unable to cope with the guilt, but he had raised Lily as his own, convincing himself that what he had done wasn't wrong because he loved her. "Officer, I swear, I never did anything wrong to her. I cared for her like she was my own," Julian said. Liam and Amelia listened in horror, their fury growing with each word. "How can you say you did nothing wrong?" Liam exploded. "You stole our child." Lily stood frozen, her mind reeling as she tried to process the truth. Anger at Julian's betrayal warred with the love she had felt for him all these years. She felt as though her entire life had been a lie, her world crumbling around her. Seeing Lily's distress, Amelia and Liam took a tentative step towards her, their arms outstretched in an offer of comfort. But Lily stepped back, raising her hands to her chest in a protective gesture. I remember loving you," she said, her voice barely audible. "But you're strangers to me now." Amelia's heart broke all over again, but she nodded in understanding. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said gently. "We can take this slowly. There's no rush. Police then began to process the scene. Julian was handcuffed and led to one of the patrol cars, his head bowed in defeat. The officers approached the embracing family, their expressions a mix of amazement and professional concern. "We'll need all of you to come down to the station," one officer said gently. "We have a lot to sort out and verify everything." Back at the station, Liam, Amelia, "You both to come with me. We'll have someone bring the girls separately." Amelia's heart clenched at the thought of being separated from Lily again, even for a short time. "But, officer," she protested, "we've just found her. Can't we ride with her?" The officer shook his head firmly. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that's not possible right now. We need to follow procedure. Don't worry, she'll be safe with us." As they were led to a patrol car, Amelia cast one last glance at Lily. The girl was now being gently escorted by a female officer, her movements hesitant and scared. Amelia's heart broke at the sight, but she forced herself to turn away and get into the police car. The ride to the station was tense and silent. Amelia and Liam sat close together in the back seat, their hands clasped tightly. The familiar streets of their old neighborhood passed by in a blur, each turn taking them further from the life they had known and closer to an uncertain future. At the station, they were led to separate interview rooms. Amelia felt a moment of panic at being apart from Liam, but she steeled herself, knowing that this was necessary to get their daughter back. In the stark, fluorescent-lit room, Amelia sat across from Detective Eva Restova, a woman with kind eyes and a nonsense attitude. Amelia took a deep breath and started her story. She spoke of the Facebook post, the resemblance she saw, the coincidences that seemed too significant to ignore. As she talked, Detective Rostova took careful notes, her face giving away nothing. In another room, Liam was going through a similar process with Detective Ben Carter. He corroborated Amelia's story, adding his own perspective on the events that had led them to this moment. Meanwhile, in a specially designed room for interviewing minors, Lily sat with a child psychologist and another detective. Her eyes were red from crying, and she hugged herself tightly, as if trying to hold herself together. "Lily," the psychologist said gently, "can you tell us about the man you were with, the one you call your dad?" Lily's voice was barely above a whisper when she replied, "His name is Julian. He's been my adoptive dad for as long as I can remember. He said my real parents died in a car accident when I was little. It's just been me and Dad for a long time. My adoptive mother, Clara, she left my dad." The detective nodded, typing as he spoke. "And what do you remember about your real parents? Any particular event or anything, maybe?" As the interviews continued, a clearer picture began to form. DNA samples were collected from everyone involved and sent to the lab for expedited analysis. Old case files were requested from the Georgia Department, and in a few hours, dusty boxes containing evidence from 13 years prior were delivered to the station and carefully re-examined. Hours passed. Amelia and Liam, reunited in a waiting area, clung to each other for support. The initial adrenaline had worn off, leaving them exhausted and emotionally drained. Yet, beneath the fatigue, a current of hope ran strong. Finally, Detective approached them, her face serious, but with a hint of something that looked like cautious optimism. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes," she said, "we've made some preliminary findings. While we're still waiting on the DNA results, we've uncovered enough evidence to believe that your story may indeed be true." Amelia's breath caught in her throat. Liam's arm tightened around her shoulders. "We showed Lily several photos we printed. From the camera you provided," the detective continued, "she was able to recognize her room and belongings, and even describe childhood events captured in the pictures. It seems she does have some memories from her early years." Amelia felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Can we see her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Detective Rostova nodded. "Yes, But keep in mind, she's been through a lot today. We can see she's emotionally shaken as well. Don't expect too much." They were led to a room where Lily sat with a social worker. The girl looked up as they entered, her eyes a mixture of wariness and curiosity. "Lily," Amelia said softly, fighting the urge to rush forward and embrace her. "We're so glad you're safe." Lily didn't respond immediately, but her gaze lingered on Amelia's face. After a moment, she spoke, her voice small but clear. I remember the room with the Hello Kitty bed." Liam cleared his throat, emotion making his voice rough. "That's right, sweetheart. That was your room. We've kept it just the same, hoping you'd come back to us someday." The social worker gently interjected. "Lily, remember what we discussed. You have a choice about where you'd like to stay tonight. You can either go to a temporary care facility, or you can go home with Amelia and Liam, with me accompanying you for supervision. What would you prefer?" Lily, overwhelmed by the day's events, looked torn. After a long moment, she spoke softly. I think I need some time. Can I stay at the care facility, just for now?" Miss Thompson nodded understandingly. "Of course, we'll make sure you're comfortable and safe." Amelia and Liam felt a pang of disappointment, but understood. They knew that rebuilding their relationship would take time and patience. As the night deepened, Lily was escorted to the temporary care facility, while Amelia and Liam were allowed to go home. As Amelia and Liam prepared to leave the police station, Detective Restover approached them, her face etched with a mixture of sympathy and professionalism. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes," she began, her voice low and measured. "I know this has been an incredibly long and emotional day for all of you. We're expediting the DNA tests, and we should have the results by tomorrow afternoon." Liam nodded, his arm tightening around Amelia's shoulders. "What happens then?" he asked, his voice hoarse with fatigue. "Once we have the DNA confirmation," she continued, "we'll need you to come back to the station. Our team of psychologists and social workers will assess the situation and determine the best course of action for Lily's well-being." Amelia leaned forward, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "And then, can we take her home?" The detective's expression softened. "If the psychologists and social workers give their approval, and if you have Lily's consent, then yes. But I want you to be prepared. This process might take a few days. Lily's been through a traumatic experience, and we need to ensure her mental and emotional well-being is prioritized." Amelia and Liam exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them. They were desperate to have their daughter home, but they understood the need for caution. "We understand," Liam said finally. "We'll do whatever is best for Lily." As they left the station, the cool night air a stark contrast to the stuffy interior, Amelia and Liam felt a strange mixture of hope and trepidation. Their daughter was alive, but the journey to rebuild their family was only just beginning. The past 72 hours had been a whirlwind of emotions: relief at the positive DNA results, anxiety during the psychological evaluations, and cautious optimism as they prepared Lily's room for her return. Today, Amelia and Liam found themselves once again climbing the steps of the police station. As they entered the building, the familiar scent of coffee and paper files greeted them. Detective Rostova met them in the lobby, a small smile playing on her lips. "Good news," she said, leading them down a hallway. "The psychologists and social workers have given their approval. By law, Lily's permitted to go home with you today." Amelia's breath caught in her throat. After 13 years of waiting, of hoping against hope, this moment felt almost surreal. They were led to a small conference room where the social worker waited with Lily. The girl sat in an oversized chair, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing clothes that Amelia had brought to the care facility. She looked up as they entered, her expression a mixture of nervousness and something that might have been hope. "Hi, Lily," Amelia said softly, fighting the urge to rush forward and embrace her daughter. "Are you ready to come home?" Lily nodded, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. "I think so," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "If that's okay, I want to see my room." Amelia felt her heart soar. She exchanged a glance with Liam, seeing her own joy and relief mirrored. In his eyes, of course. "It's okay," Liam said gently. "We'd love to have you come home with us." The social worker stood, smiling encouragingly at Lily. "Remember what we talked about," she said gently. "It's okay to take it slow and to tell Amelia and Liam if you're feeling overwhelmed." The drive home was quiet, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Lily gazed out the window, watching as unfamiliar streets gradually gave way to a neighborhood that tugged at the edges of her memory. As they pulled into the driveway of the Hayes home, Amelia noticed Lily sit up straighter, her eyes fixed on the house. "Do you recognize it?" Liam asked gently, turning in his seat to look at Lily. She nodded slowly, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I think I remember the tree in the front yard. Didn't it have a swing?" Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, you loved that swing. We can put it back up if you'd like." They made their way inside, the house seeming to hold its breath as Lily crossed the threshold. In the living room, Lily's gaze was immediately drawn to the mantelpiece, where family photos chronicled a life interrupted. "Would you like to see your room?" Amelia asked, her voice trembling slightly with anticipation. Lily nodded, and they ascended the stairs together. As Lily pushed open the door to her room, a small gasp escaped her lips. The pink walls, the stuffed animals, the Hello Kitty bed. It was all just as she had seen in the photographs, yet being here in person was overwhelming. The air seemed to shift, filled with a mixture of nostalgia and hope. She took a tentative step inside, her fingers trailing over the dresser, the bookshelf, the toy box. Each touch seemed to spark a memory, faint but unmistakably real. "It's just like how I remembered it," Lily whispered. Her hand reaching out to touch the bedspread, her fingers traced the pattern, and a flicker of recognition passed across her face. The dam broke, and Lily began to cry in earnest. Without thinking, Amelia wrapped her arms around her daughter. And to her surprise and joy, Lily didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into the embrace, her body shaking with sobs. "I'm sorry," she mumbled. "I don't know why I'm crying." "Oh, sweetheart," Amelia said softly, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "You have nothing to be sorry for. This is overwhelming for all of us." Liam nodded in agreement. "We're just so happy to have you back here." "Welcome home, Lily," he said softly, his voice filled with love and promise. As the day wore on, Amelia and Liam left Lily to explore her room. They felt a sense of completion they hadn't experienced in 13 years. The house creaked and settled around them, no longer echoing with the absence of their child, but humming with the presence of their reunited family. After a moment of silence, Liam turned to Amelia, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You know," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I owe you an apology." Amelia looked at him, puzzled. "What for?" Liam took a deep breath. "For all those times I questioned your yearly ritual. The cleaning, the preserving of Lily's room. I thought it was holding you back, keeping you from moving on. But now I see, it was preparing for this day. It wasn't in vain at all." Amelia felt fresh tears welling up in her eyes as Liam continued. "Our daughter came home to a clean room, to cherished belongings that sparked her memories. Your dedication, your unwavering hope, it made this homecoming possible." He squeezed her hand tightly. "I should have supported you more. I should have understood." Amelia leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Oh, Liam," she whispered. "You supported me in your own way. We both coped as best we could. What matters is that we're here now, together, and Lily is home. Liam nodded, wrapping his arm around her. You're right. And I promise you, from now on, we face everything as a team. No more doubts, no more separate ways of grieving. We're in this together, for Lily. They sat there for a while longer, drawing strength from each other, marveling at the turn their lives had taken. The house felt different now, no longer a shrine to a lost child, but a home vibrating with new life and possibility. Story 2. I took the summer internship at the orchard outside Willow Creek for the quiet. I was 22, finishing up my 3rd year of university in Boston, and needed a break from everything. Big cities wear you down in ways that creep up slowly too. Much noise, too many faces, not enough space to think. So when I saw a listing for an orchard job, modest pay, room and board included, I applied without thinking twice. I imagined long days in the sun, pruning branches, organizing crates of fruit, and going to bed tired in the good kind of way. The place was small, family run. A retired couple named the Millers owned it. They were kind and mostly left me to my own tasks. I picked fruit, hauled boxes, and did odd jobs like organizing tools or keeping track of shipments. The house was simple and cozy, and the guest room they gave me was clean. There was a large barn about 100 meters from the main house that stored the heavier equipment and crates waiting for delivery trucks. For the first week, everything was exactly how I'd hoped. Calm, repetitive, no pressure. Then the music started. It was the second Monday of my stay, around 3:45 in the afternoon. I was hauling baskets of early picked peaches toward the edge of the orchard when I heard it. Soft, almost pleasant at first, an ice cream truck melody, one of those cheerful jingles meant for children. It drifted through the trees, faint but unmistakable. The tune was one I couldn't name, but it had that too sweet, mechanical quality. I paused, confused, and scanned the nearby road. There was nothing, no van, no people, just trees and the distant edge of the barn. I assumed it was a kid nearby, playing something on their phone, maybe a ringtone or a prank speaker. But I hadn't seen any children around the orchard. It was rural, fenced off, and the only visitors we got were scheduled buyers. Still, I brushed it off and kept working. The next day, the same thing happened. At almost exactly the same time, same tune, a bit louder this time. I walked toward the sound, thinking maybe it was from the neighbor's property or one of the Millers. Grandkids. As I approached the barn, the music stopped. Not faded, stopped dead. Silence, like someone hit a switch. I went inside the barn to check. It was dim and dusty as always, full of crates, equipment, and the old red tractor. Nothing. Out of place. But I noticed something small. A stepladder that had been against the wall was now in the center of the floor, unfolded. Not alarming, just strange. I hadn't put it there. The Millers hadn't been in the barn that day. I shrugged it off. By the 4th day, I mentioned it to Mrs. Miller over dinner. "Do you ever hear a music box or a truck jingle in the afternoons?" I asked. She paused, mid-chew, and looked up. "No, we don't have any vendors out here." "Why?" I explained briefly, not trying to make a big deal of it. She nodded slowly and said, "Maybe a toy left in the barn. One of my sons had a music box that played a tune like that, could be buried in the crates." I nodded back. That made sense. Maybe a wind-up toy, triggered by vibration or temperature. I went to bed thinking about how old electronics can do weird things, but it didn't explain why. The music always stopped the second I got close to the barn. On Saturday, I decided to test something. Around 3:40, I left my basket and walked to the far corner of the orchard, near the trail to the road. I stood behind a tree and waited. At 3:47, almost to the second, the music began again. I stayed. Still, it was louder from this spot, still distant, but not muffled by leaves or walls. It was coming from the direction of the barn, not the road, not a house. I walked carefully, quietly. Every step I took, the music continued. It never wavered, never got closer or further. It was as if it was playing at the same volume, waiting. For me, when I reached the barn door and touched the handle, it stopped. Inside, the ladder was on its side. A box had been pulled part way from the shelf. I checked the crate. It was full of rags and rusted garden tools. No music box, no speakers. I searched for 10 minutes and found nothing that could have produced sound. I locked the barn and went back to work. On Sunday, I didn't hear the music. I waited for it, ears straining at every buzz of a fly, every engine on the 4-off road. Nothing. For a moment, I wondered if I had finally imagined it all. Stress, sun, isolational, the things that make your brain play tricks. Then Monday came. 3:45, the music returned. This time, I ran. I didn't stop until I got to the barn door. The tune didn't stop until my hand touched the latch. Inside, the stepladder was back in the center, fully extended. On the top step, an unopened ice cream cone, a real one, strawberry. I stood frozen. It was cold, not melting, not unwrapped, like someone had placed it there minutes before I came. I picked it up. It wasn't labeled, just generic packaging, smooth like plastic. I brought it to the house and showed Mr. Miller. He stared at it for a long time. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "In the barn, on the ladder." He took it from me and opened the trash bin, dropped it in, closed the lid. No one should be leaving. "Food in there," he said. "Could attract animals." I nodded, but that wasn't the real problem. That night, I couldn't sleep. My brain was too busy running in circles. I started to feel like I was the only one seeing it, like everyone else had quietly accepted something they didn't want to talk about. So the next day, I made a plan. I set up my phone in the barn at 3:30, propped it between two crates with the camera pointed toward the center of the floor. I pressed record, then I left. I waited in the orchard as usual. At 3:46, the music began. I did not approach. I stayed, frozen under a tree, staring at the barn in the distance. After it stopped, I ran back, breath tight in my chest. The phone was still recording. I replayed the footage immediately. Nothing. No ladder, no music, no movement. The barn stayed quiet and undisturbed for the full 20 minutes. But the ladder was in the center of the room again when I looked up at this time. I didn't say anything to the Millers. I started counting down the days until my contract ended. 2 weeks passed. The music continued every day at the same time, always. Stopping when I approached, always followed by small changes. Tools moved, doors ajar, fresh objects placed neatly, a comb, a lollipop, a pair of tiny sandals. Each time, I removed them and disposed of them quietly, without asking questions. On my second to last day, the music started as usual. I didn't move. I stayed in the orchard. I sat under a tree and closed my eyes, let it play, but it didn't stop. It kept going. 1 minute, then 3, then 5. I stood and looked toward the barn. I could see the door wide open. The music still played, louder than before. He wasn't waiting for me anymore. I walked toward it, heart pounding. The sound echoed now, bouncing off the trees. The tune looped and stuttered like a broken record. Inside the barn, the ladder was gone. Instead, in the center of the floor, was the ice cream truck. Not a real one, a child's toy version, large enough to hold a toddler, painted white and pink, with speakers. mounted on top. The same melody played from its speaker. Next to it, a handwritten note. "I knew you'd come. Thank you." That's all it said. I backed out, closed the door, and didn't go back. The next morning, I packed early and left before breakfast. I never collected my final week's pay. I don't know if the Millers knew what was happening in their barn. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't want to know. Maybe it was theirs to carry, and I simply walked into it. All I know is I don't hear that music anymore, but I still remember the tune, every note. And sometimes, when things are too quiet, I catch myself humming it under my breath, without realizing. Story 2. I was 16 when my parents took me to Lisbon, Portugal, for summer holidays. It wasn't the kind of destination most kids from my school would talk about. Most were into resort towns, beach, clubs, or other parts of Europe. But my dad's idea of travel was somewhere interesting, somewhere people don't go. And I'll admit, I was more excited than I let on. It sounded cool, a little wild. Plus, I got to bring my drone. I'd saved up for it for nearly a year, a mid-quadcopter with a high-race camera, GPS auto-stabilization, and decent battery life. Not a toy, but not a pro setup either. I had used it back home to get footage of skate parks, forests, rooftops, all harmless stuff. Portugal felt like the perfect playground, wide open space, beautiful landscapes, and nobody to stop me from flying it wherever I wanted. We were staying in a 3-story boutique hotel just outside the city center. Not fancy, but nice, clean, quiet, and with a small rooftop area where I could launch the drone safely. On the third evening, just after dinner, I brought it up to get a sunset shot. The city below looked small and quiet, and the air was still. I launched it without issue, and soon it was humming above the rooftops, sending back clear, live footage to my tablet. I pushed it forward slowly, tilting the camera, trying to catch the pink-orange light off the windows. It was peaceful, smooth. About 10 minutes in, something darted across the screen, a blur, maybe 10 meters above mine. I looked up, expecting to see a bird, but I saw another drone, sleeker, black. I hadn't seen it launch. It hovered silently for a moment, then began circling, mine in slow, deliberate arcs. I tilted my camera upward to get a better look. It wasn't marked, no brand, no ID sticker like mine had, just a clean black shell with curved blades. I adjusted my position, trying to move away from it. The drone followed. I thought maybe someone else in the hotel had brought one. I tried to move higher, thinking maybe I'd get above its range. It responded immediately, climbing with me, fast. It kept perfect distance, never colliding, never retreating. Then the feed glitched. My screen went white for half a second, then returned, but now the camera was shaking. I tapped the controls, trying to level out, but the drone was already spiraling. A warning popped up on my app. Motor malfunction. Emergency descent. I could still see the other drone as mine plummeted. It hovered calmly, perfectly level, watching. I lost signal before mine hit the ground. I remember cursing out loud and running down to tell my dad. He said, maybe it was interference, bad wiring, a fault in the model. You've been flying it a lot lately. These things overheat. I wanted to believe him. I tried to believe it was just bad luck. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way that other drone moved. Not like someone casually flying it, but like it was responding, like it was studying mine. I didn't have time to look for the wreckage that night. It had gone down near a row of industrial buildings, a few blocks east, fenced off, closed by dusk. I planned to go in the morning, but by morning, the wreckage wasn't there. I checked the crash site using the GPS from the last ping. Nothing. Not even a broken propeller. 2 days later, I got an envelope. Not mail, just a plain manila envelope left at the front desk for my room. My parents assumed it was from the hotel staff. No return name, no stamp, no note. Inside was a USB drive. I waited until they were downstairs to open it, plugged it into my tablet. It contained one file, a 4-minute video titled only with the date, 2020_12_19.mp4. I played it. It was dark footage, a static wide shot of my bed, the exact bed in my hotel room. The timestamp showed it had been recorded 2 nights before. It was me, sleeping. I didn't move for most of it, just curled up under the sheets. At one point, I adjusted slightly, pulling the pillow under my head. That was it. The entire video was from the ceiling corner, angled down. My tablet was on the side table, my suitcase, the same clothes, everything matched. I paused it and checked every inch of my ceiling. No camera. I pulled the vent grates, unscrewed the lamp fixture. Nothing. I checked the windows, even the curtain. Rods. There was no camera in the room. But the footage had been real. The USB had no other data, no metadata, no sender. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the lights on, tablet open, audio recording app running in the background, just in case. I locked the windows, double-checked the door chain, slid a chair against the handle. The next morning, I told my dad. He didn't believe me, thought I'd downloaded something creepy as a prank or a virus, until I showed him the video. Then he got quiet. He asked if I'd left the balcony door open. I hadn't. He checked it again anyway. We took the USB to the hotel manager. She promised to review the hallway and lobby footage. The next day, she said there was nothing. No one. Unusual? No delivery. No signs of anyone entering our floor after 10 p.m. She seemed nervous. Said she'd report it to local police if we wanted. We did. The officer who came by took our statement, but said frankly there wasn't much they could. The officer who came by took our statement, but said frankly there wasn't much they could do. No name, no camera, no visible break-in, and technically nothing had been stolen. Could be a prank, he said, a local teen with a long lens or a tech. Not with access to old vents. I asked about the other drone. He shrugged. Could be military, could be imported, could be nothing. We left the country the next day, but it wasn't over. A week after we got back home, I got another envelope. This time it was taped to our mailbox. No return address, same manila envelope. Inside, another USB. The footage was from our home. Same setup, camera in the corner, me sleeping, different bed, different room, my face turned to the wall, breathing evenly. I hadn't told anyone which room I slept in. That was the last file I ever received. But I haven't flown a drone since. I don't talk about the story at school. My parents tried reporting the second envelope to local authorities. But again, no fingerprints, no delivery footage, no signs of a break-in. Whoever they are, they're careful. And they wanted me to know they were watching. There was something about the other drone I still think about. The way it hovered, matching my movements exactly. It didn't need to follow my drone. It had already picked me. That was just the warning. It wasn't just about drones. It never was. It was about who had the better angle, who could see you when you couldn't see them. And the message was clear. You're never flying alone. Story 3. It was 3 weeks into a solo backpacking trip through Vietnam when I ended up in Hoi An. It wasn't originally on my list, but I'd heard from a fellow traveler in Hanoi that the beaches were quieter, less commercial. After a few days of constant movement and overcrowded hostels, that sounded perfect. I booked a small room in a local guest house run by an older couple who barely spoke English but smiled constantly and offered me tea every time I passed their kitchen. The morning it happened, I was walking along the beach with no real destination. I had left my phone in the room intentionally. I just wanted a quiet hour to myself. There was barely anyone else around. Just the distant shape of a fisherman near the rocks and a couple of stray dogs trotting in and out of the surf. I wasn't thinking about anything important, just letting my mind drift. That's when I saw it. A blue booklet, half buried in the sand, wedged up against a clump of dried seaweed. It looked like a passport. At first, I assumed it had washed up from the tide, or had been dropped by someone who hadn't noticed. Curious, I crouched down and picked it up. It was dry, not even a little damp, which was strange given how close it was to the waterline. I wiped the sand off the cover and opened it. That's when everything in my body pulled tight. The photo on the ID page was me. Not someone who looked like me. Not someone with a passing resemblance me. Same face, same hair, same mole near my collarbone. I stared at it in disbelief. It wasn't just similar. It was the exact same photo I'd used for my real passport 2 years ago. But that's where the similarities ended. The name listed wasn't mine. It was close enough to give me pause, but off in a way that made my stomach twist. Eleanor Vance. My name is Ella Vance. My birthday was wrong by 3 days. The country listed was Australia, not Canada, and the issue date was 1 month before. My real passport had been issued, with an expiry 10 years later. I felt dizzy. I flipped through the rest of the pages. A few stamps, all fakes. I could tell because one had a date format that wasn't even used in the country it claimed to represent. But they looked real at a glance. If someone handed this over at a border, they'd probably get through without a second look. I turned in a slow circle, half expecting to see someone running toward me to retrieve it. No one, just the empty beach. I put the passport in my bag and walked quickly back to my guest house. I didn't even bother with lunch. I locked the door to my room and pulled out my own passport from my backpack. I stared at it, then the fake one, side by side. My photo, but a different identity. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone had stolen my photo online and forged a document. But how would they have gotten that exact image? The photo was taken at a government office. It wasn't digital. I'd never uploaded it anywhere. It didn't exist online. That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept checking the door lock. Every creak in the hall made my heart jump. The next morning, I took the passport to the local police station. I tried explaining what I had found, but the officer behind the desk barely spoke English and waved me off after a minute of confusion. Another officer eventually came over and translated. When I showed them both the document and my actual passport, they looked at each other, then at me, and shrugged. One of them said, "Tourist forgery. Happens sometimes." He didn't even take it from me. "Throw it away," he added. I left the station feeling worse. That passport was me. Someone had made it, printed it, aged it to look real, and left it exactly where I would find it. That couldn't be a coincidence. That afternoon, I went online at an internet cafe and looked up my name. I wanted to see if someone had used my image for anything. Nothing turned up. But when I reverse searched the photo from the passport, the fake one, I found a profile. Not mine. A forum account. Low activity. Only a handful of posts. Username, Evans. I clicked. The account had joined 2 months ago. One post was about travel safety in Vietnam. Another was in a visa advice thread, claiming to be heading through the Mediterranean via ferry. The avatar, my face, my photo. I sat there, staring at the screen. My hands were cold. I created a burner account and replied to the visa thread. "Where are you traveling from?" Within minutes, they responded. "Just finished up in Hoi An." I logged out and left. Back at the guest house, I packed my things. I couldn't explain it, but I didn't feel safe anymore. I told the owners I was heading out early, and they seemed surprised but didn't question it. I took a bus back to Hanoi and booked a hotel near the airport. My plan was to get out of Vietnam altogether, just go back. To Europe, anywhere at the airport the next morning. I handed my real passport to the attendant. She scanned it, frowned, then typed something manually. I felt a chill creep into my spine. She called over another staff member. They both looked at my passport, then at me. "This passport has already been logged," one of them said in slow, accented English. "It shows an entry yesterday from the same name, same photo, already exited to Bangkok." "That's impossible," I said, panic rising. "I've been here. I never left. That's me." The woman squinted. "Are you sure it wasn't you?" I pulled out the fake passport. "Someone made this. I found it in the sand. This is a fake." The moment I said that, she stepped back. The man with her took the document from my hand and asked me to come with him to a small side room. I was questioned for nearly 2 hours. They wanted to know how I got the fake passport, why my entry record didn't match my current departure, if I was lying. Eventually, after checking my entry stamps and confirming my hostel's log, they allowed me to leave, but they kept the fake passport. I made it to Thailand later that day. I tried to put it behind me, but every now and then I check forums, I check visa sites, I search the name Eleanor Vance. Sometimes she pops up. A comment here, a travel photo that looks almost like mine but not quite, taken from an angle eye. Don't remember, in a city I've never visited. Once, I even found a booking confirmation posted in a hotel review, dated 2 weeks after I'd left Vietnam, with a confirmation under that name and my photo attached to the guest profile. I don't know what happened. I don't know who created that passport or why. But someone out there had plans for my face, and I don't think they were finished. Story 4. We had only been in Italy for 3 days when it happened. My girlfriend Mia and I had rented a small stone cottage just outside of Siena for a week-long getaway in early June. It was our first real trip since moving in together, something simple and quiet. No bustling cities, just nature, wine, and each other. Mia had found a short hike online that led to a scenic overlook tucked between olive groves and cliffs. Apparently popular with locals, but off the radar for most tourists. It wasn't far from where we were staying, maybe a 2-hour walk if we took our time. She packed her own little picnic, cheese, fruit, a small bottle of vermouth, and some cured ham she'd picked up at the local market. The trail was mostly dry earth and stone, winding through patches of shade and long stretches of sun. We passed an old farmer walking a donkey, a couple of kids on bikes. Otherwise, we were alone. That's what we wanted, quiet space. We didn't talk much on the way up, but we held hands, pointed out small things, wildflowers, lizards darting across, rocks. At some point, I remember Mia asking if I heard water nearby, but I didn't, and we kept going. Just a couple more bends, and we reached the overlook. It was stunning, the kind of view that silences you for a second. A sheer drop down into the gorge, olive trees carpeting the slopes in a patchwork of green din, and just far enough from town that you couldn't hear anything except your own breath. But what stopped us wasn't the view. It was the picnic laid out. In the center of the overlook, on a red checkered blanket, was a fully prepared spread. Not like what we brought. This was elaborate. A whole bottle of wine chilling in a silver bucket of ice, 2 glasses, a small loaf of fresh bread, sliced olives in a ceramic bowl, sliced fruit, cold cuts, even a knife, and little plates stacked neatly to the side. It looked like something from a wedding catalogue. At first I thought maybe someone had gotten there before us. That was logical. We weren't the only people in Italy with a picnic plan. but there was something off. The blanket was perfectly scented. The food didn't look half-eaten. The glasses were dry. The wine bottle was still sealed. Most strangely, there were no bags, no backpacks, no people, and no footprints. I know that sounds impossible, but I mean it. No scuffs in the dust, no tracks leading to or from the area. Mia walked a slow circle around the setup and then looked at me. "Did they go to the bathroom or something?" she asked. "Like into the trees?" I scanned the tree line, the low grass. "Together," she shrugged, but I could see her unease. "It's too clean." I didn't like how she said it. I approached the blanket and crouched down. Everything looked fresh. The bread hadn't gone hard. The olives were still glossy with oil, and the ice hadn't melted, not even slightly, like it had just been poured seconds ago. "It's not possible," I muttered. "What?" Mia asked. This, I pointed to the ice bucket. "That shouldn't still be solid. It's been at least 25 degrees all morning." Mia came closer, but didn't touch anything. I could see her instincts kicking in. She was always the more grounded one. Her face had this mix of curiosity and discomfort, like she couldn't figure out whether to take a photo or run. "Someone's watching us," she whispered suddenly. I looked around, heart lurching. Where? I don't know. It just feels like it. We stood, in silence, not another sound. No wind, no birds. Mia reached for my hand. "Let's go." We didn't eat our own picnic. We didn't even open the bag. We walked back the way we came, faster than before, saying very little. I kept glancing behind us, convinced I'd see someone trailing in the distance, but no one came. When we got back to the cottage, Mia locked the door. I laughed at her for it, not because it was funny, but because it helped cover the tension hanging over us. We sat on the couch, opened a beer, and promised not to talk about it anymore. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of something sour. I followed it to the kitchen. Our own picnic bag, still sealed from the day before, was sitting on the counter, opened. The food was spoiled, all of it. The cheese was wet and discolored. The fruit had rotted. The cured ham looked green in places, and the bread had gone stiff as wood. I hadn't unpacked it. Neither had Mia. We left it zipped and untouched in the cottage entryway. But now it was laid out, like someone had tried to copy what we saw on the cliff, but failed. I called Mia in. She stopped in the doorway and just stared. She didn't say anything, just shook her head slowly. We threw everything out, cleaned the counter, didn't talk much for the rest of the day. Something unspoken had started to creep into the space between us. Not fear, exactly. Something closer to confusion and violation. That night, I dreamed about the overlook. Only this time, it was me sitting at the blanket. Mia stood behind me, frozen, watching. I looked down at the food, and it was moving, breathing, like it had lungs beneath the olives and bread. When I woke up, I didn't tell her. I didn't want to feed it. On our last day in Siena, Mia told me she wanted to go back. I said no. She insisted, not to stay long, just to check, see if it was still there. Part of me thought she wanted to believe it was innocent, just a weird coincidence. Or maybe she needed to confront it, to let it go. We walked the same path, slower this time. Neither of us spoke much. When we reached the overlook, my stomach dropped. The blanket was gone. All of it. No food, no ice, no trace. Not even a bent blade of grass. But something had changed. Where the blanket had been, there was now a piece of paper held down by a small, smooth rock. Mia picked it up before I could say anything. She stared at it for a long time, then turned it so I could see. It was a photo of us, taken from behind. The two of us walking up the trail, hand in hand, our backs to the camera. I recognized the moment. It had to have been taken the first time we came, just before we saw the blanket. Same clothes, same posture, but there was no one else there. That day, Mia didn't say anything. She folded the photo and put it in her pocket. We walked back to the cottage without stopping once. That night, I heard her crying in the shower. She tried to hide it, but I knew. I sat on the bed, staring at our backpack. We didn't eat a single meal outdoors after that, not even on the patio. We left Italy 2 days early. I never saw the photo. Again, I asked Mia about it once, months later, and she said she burned it. I believe her. We still go on trips sometimes, but never remote places. No more hikes, no more scenic overlooks, and no more picnics. Because somewhere out there, something had laid that blanket for us before we arrived, and whatever it was, it wanted us to sit. Story 5. I was 16 that summer, trying to disappear for a while. Not vanish, not literally. I just didn't want to be seen. My family had rented a holiday house outside Aspen, and I had agreed to go because it meant being far from school, far from the stairs, and far from the questions that came when you didn't fit into the version of yourself everyone expected. I had just come out to my family the year before. They were supportive, mostly. Not perfect, but I knew they were trying. Still, even in a new place, even surrounded by strangers, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It's something that sticks with you when you grow up never being quite what people expect. So I stayed quiet. I kept to myself. The house we rented was nothing special. It was tucked at the edge of a quiet road with tall hedges and a half-finished garden. The best part was the pool. Not big, but clean, deep enough to dive. I spent most mornings floating in it, headphones in, letting the water muffle everything. It was one of the few places I could just exist without thinking about anything. Else it was maybe our 5th or 6th day there when it happened. My little cousin Leo was visiting for the weekend, and he'd brought one of those plastic pool rings, the kind kids toss and dive after. He wasn't strong enough to reach the bottom yet, so I played the diver. He'd throw, I'd fetch, over and over, until the ring sank deeper than usual and landed right near the main drain in the deep end. I kicked down hard, eager to impress him, reaching toward the plastic when something next to it caught my eye. Something flat, pale, and rectangular, weighted with what looked like 2 small rocks on either side. I hovered for a moment, unsure. Then I grabbed the ring and the flat object and kicked back up. Leo laughed as I surfaced, but I barely heard him. I swam to the edge, pulled myself out, and examined what I was holding. It was a sealed envelope, plastic wrapped, like it had been. Deliberately watered. There were rocks taped to each end, maybe to keep it from floating. The plastic was thin and aged, but the envelope inside was intact, white, standard size, with no address. But there was writing in smudged blue ink. Someone had written, "Read this if you care." I didn't open it right away. I dried it off, sat under the umbrella while Leo went inside for snacks, and just stared at it. It looked old, but not ancient, a little yellowed, like something that had been sitting somewhere out of sight for years. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe a prank, maybe a list of someone's secrets. Either way, I knew I had to read it. Peeled back the plastic carefully, opened the envelope, and unfolded the single sheet inside. The handwriting was neat, not rushed. It filled most of the page. My name is Alex. If you're reading this, it means someone found me, or at least found where I gave up. I'm not writing this for sympathy. I'm writing it because I didn't want to vanish without a trace. I wanted someone to know that I was here, that I existed. I'm 15. I was born as Alexandra, but that's not who I am. I've known that for years, even if no one else wanted to hear it. My parents think I'm confused. My school thinks I'm a disruption. Even my friends started looking at me, like I was contagious. It's lonely when everyone looks through you. I came here every summer since I was a kid. It used to be my favorite place, but this year I decided it would be the last. I'm sorry if this hurts anyone. I really am, but I'm tired of fighting just to exist. The letter continued for a few more lines, some apologies, a few memories of the pool, and one final line that hit me harder than I could explain. I hope someone finds this. I hope someone like me finds this, so they know they're not alone. The letter was signed Alex, not Alexandra. January 2000. I remember reading it again and again. My hands were shaking and my throat felt tight. I didn't cry, not then. I just sat there, the chlorine drying on my skin, the sun hot on my back, thinking about how close I'd come to never knowing this person had existed. I asked my aunt about the house. She said it used to be a long-term rental, sometimes empty between summers. The pool had been filled in late '99, used occasionally by guests before they replaced the pump in 2001. No drownings that she remembered, but she hadn't lived in Aspen long. I didn't tell her what I found. I didn't tell anyone, not even Leo. I wasn't sure how to explain it, or if I even had the right to, but I kept the letter. I folded it back into the envelope, sealed it again, and tucked it in my suitcase. That night, when everyone was asleep, I sat by the pool in the dark and read it one more time. It was the first time in months I didn't feel completely alone. The next day, I went to the local library while the others were out. I searched through old newspapers on their computer. January 2000. Nothing about a drowning, but in the community bulletin, there was a small notice: Alexandra T. 15, of Denver, missing. Last seen near the lakeside holiday homes in Aspen, wearing a blue sundress. Please contact police with any information. No follow-up, no resolution. I sat there, staring at the screen for a long time. No mention of Alex, no one who saw who he really was. Just another missing girl with the wrong name. I printed the bulletin and kept it with the letter. That night, I wrote a reply. I didn't know if it was foolish or if anyone would ever see it, but I wrote anyway. I wrote to Alex like he was still listening. I told him who I was. I told him what it felt like, trying to explain yourself to people who didn't want to understand. I told him about my family, about my name, about the days I didn't want to be here either. And then I told him what it meant to find his letter, how he saved me. I sealed it in a waterproof bag, taped it with the same kind of rocks, and the next morning, when no one was around, I dove down and left it in the same spot I'd found his. Not for closure, not to pretend like everything would be okay, but so maybe one day, someone else like us might find it and know that they weren't alone. Either, I don't know if anyone ever did. I don't know if the pool's been drained since, but I think about that summer a lot. I think about Alex and how his words reached someone he never met. It's been over 20 years since that summer. I still have the letter. It sits folded in a box, with things I've carried through every move, every hard night, every part of my life when I needed to remember who I was. And every once in a while, I take it out and read that last line. I hope someone like me finds this, so they know they're not alone. I did, and I never forgot story 6. I don't talk about this much, not because I'm scared anymore, but because most people just dismiss it. I've told it before, once, maybe twice, and each time the reaction is the same. Raised eyebrows, awkward silence, maybe a joke. So I learned to keep it to myself. But since you're asking for something real, I'll tell you. Just know it actually happened. And I remember every second of it like it's tattooed on my brain. It was the summer of 1992. I was 23, a university student from Bucharest, and I had borrowed my cousin's old Dacia 1310 to drive down to Brest. I was headed there to visit a friend, Andre, who'd moved recently for a teaching job. He'd promised to show me around, introduce me to some local people, maybe even help me find part-time work if I wanted to stay longer. I didn't mind the drive. It was only about a couple of hours. I'd done it before. About halfway in, on the DN1 road, the car started to cough. First, it stuttered, then slowed down, even though I hadn't eased off the gas. I pulled over and turned off the engine, waited, tried again. Nothing, just a hollow click and a quiet whir. I wasn't panicked, not yet. Cars broke down, and this one was basically held together by duct tape and hope. But it was getting late, and this was before cell phones were common, at least for broke students like me. I looked around. On my right was a small dirt path cutting off from the main road, almost hidden by trees. Not thick forests exactly, but enough greenery to block the view past a few meters. There was no traffic, and I'd passed the last proper village maybe 20 minutes earlier. I figured I had two options: wait for someone to drive by or walk, and hope there was a house nearby. I sat for a while, leaning on the hood, hoping a car would appear. None did. I waited another 10 minutes. Still nothing. Eventually, I decided to follow the dirt path and look for help. I didn't want to wander too far, but if there was a house nearby, they might have a phone or tools. The path curved a bit, then sloped downward. After maybe 5 minutes of walking, I saw it. A small house tucked between some trees. Faded beige walls, dark windows, no smoke, no lights. It looked old, but not abandoned. There were tire tracks in the dirt and a rusted bike leaning against the side. I approached cautiously and knocked on the door. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing, but the door creaked open, just slightly. It hadn't been fully closed. I called out, "Hello?" I stepped in, just enough to be under the frame. "My car broke down," I said, louder, in case someone was inside. "I just need help calling a friend." Still silence. The interior smelled faintly of dust and something metallic. There was a narrow hallway, and I could see a wooden chair knocked over at the end. I didn't go farther. I stood there for a moment, debating. Then I heard it. Movement. Not loud, just the faint creak of floorboards somewhere deeper in the house. "Hello," I repeated. "It's just my car. I won't come in, I promise. I just need help." A voice replied, a woman's voice, soft but very close. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. It hadn't come from inside. It had come from behind me. I turned around. Quickly, there was no one there, just the path, the trees, the outline of my car far off in the distance. The hairs on my neck stood up. I stepped back out onto the porch, heart racing. I looked around. Nothing. No signs of life. But I swear to you, I heard it, clear and close. Someone standing just behind me, speaking right into my ear. I walked fast back to the road. Didn't run, just moved with urgency. When I got back to the car, it was still there, running. I hadn't left the engine on, let me be clear. I'd turned the key, and it hadn't started. That's why I went looking for help. But now it was idling quietly, like nothing had ever gone wrong. The headlights were on, the door was open. My bag, which I had left on the passenger seat, was lying on the ground outside. I got in. I didn't question it. I didn't care. I just drove. The engine responded immediately. Smooth, easy, no stalling, no stutter, like it was brand new. I reached Brasov in record time. Andrei was surprised to see me early and visibly shaken. I told him the basics. The car had trouble. I found a house, then the engine worked again. I left out the voice, left out the part about the open door and the bag. I didn't want to sound crazy, but it didn't end there. That night, I woke up in the guest room. I had had a dream, one of those vivid ones where you're half awake, I was back at that house, same hallway, same knocked-over chair, except this time, someone was sitting in the corner, a woman, maybe in her 50s, wearing a long dark dress. She wasn't looking at me, just rocking slightly, whispering something I couldn't understand. When I told Andre in the morning, he turned pale. He said, "What road did you break down on?" "DN1, I said, "near the bend before the old gravel bridge." Just nodded. Then he told me something I didn't know. Back in the late 70s, there was a woman who lived in that area, alone, reportedly reclusive. Rumors said she lost her daughter in a car accident on that very road. A drunk driver hit the girl while she was biking. After that, she apparently lost her mind. People say she used to stand outside by the road and shout warnings at cars that passed too fast. "You shouldn't be here," she'd yell. Eventually, she disappeared. No body was found. Some people thought she just wandered into the forest and never came back. Others believed she did something worse. I asked if the house still existed. Andre shook his head. It was torn down years ago. Nothing there now, just trees. I didn't believe him at first. The house was real. I'd seen it. I'd stood on its porch. The next day, we drove out there. Same bend, same dirt path. But it led to nothing. Just trees, a clearing, some wild grass, and silence. I never found an explanation that made sense. Mechanically, the car had no issue after that. I used it for 2 more weeks without a single hiccup. No engine trouble, no electrical faults. Andre asked a local mechanic to check it for me. Clean bill of health. I went back to Bucharest, finished my degree. But I never took that road again, not alone, and not after dark. Years later, out of pure curiosity, I went back to Brasov with my wife, just to see. The road had changed a bit, more traffic, more signage, but the path was still there, barely visible now, overgrown. She stayed in the car while I walked down. This time, there was no house, just woods. Still, I paused and called out, like I had all those years ago. Nothing replied, not a sound, but as I turned to walk back, I felt something. Not a hand, not a voice, just a weight, that same cold pressure behind my neck, like someone watching from inches away. I didn't look back, I didn't speak. I just walked back to the car, kissed my wife, and we drove away. I never returned after that, so no, I don't care if people believe me. I don't need them to. I know what I saw, I know what I heard, and I know that somewhere out there, between Bucharest and Brasov, there once stood a house that didn't want to be found, and a woman who, even in death, still whispers warnings to those who don't listen. Story 7. I never planned on driving alone through Iceland, especially not in the dead of winter. But the opportunity came up last minute, and something in me said yes before logic could step in. I was offered a small freelance documentary gig, nothing glamorous, just a solo piece on isolated Arctic roads, how people survive them, the hidden human stories of solitude. I'd been itching for something raw, something unfiltered. My assignment was to drive from Reykjavik to a tiny research outpost about 8 hours north, along one of those ice roads you see in survival shows. I was told the road was safe, mostly solid, maintained irregularly by snow crews, and I had an emergency satellite phone if things went wrong. I packed light, double-checked everything, and started my drive at dawn. The first few hours were uneventful. I kept the camera on the dash, talking occasionally to document the journey. I remember mentioning how strange it was that such silence could press so loudly on your ears. It was peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced before, but I also remember how quickly that feeling faded. It began with something simple. I saw a man walking along the right edge of the road. He was barefoot, shirtless, wearing only a pair of dark pants. I assumed my eyes were playing tricks on me. There was no way someone could survive in that weather dressed like that. I slowed the car, concerned, thinking maybe someone had fallen out of a vehicle or wandered from a broken down snowmobile. I stopped completely when I was close enough, lowered my window, and called out to him. He didn't respond. He kept walking, slow but steady, his arms limp at his sides, his skin raw and pink from the cold. He didn't even shiver. I watched him pass my car without even turning his head. I froze for a second. Something about the way he moved it wasn't roboted, but it wasn't fully human either, like he wasn't completely in his body. I got out of the car, took a few steps toward him, and shouted again. Nothing. No sound, no reaction. And then I noticed there were no footprints. Not behind him, not in front of him. Nothing. The road was powdery. Fresh snow had settled just hours ago, and I could see my own boot prints clearly behind me. But the area around him was untouched. Backed away slowly, returned to the car, locked the doors, and pulled out my satellite phone. I called the emergency number I'd been given, but the call dropped instantly. I tried again. Same thing. The signal bar blinked twice and disappeared. I turned the engine back on and kept driving. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to know if he was still there. I didn't even talk to the camera anymore. I drove for another 2 hours without stopping. There was nothing out there. No towns, no junctions, not even a gas station. Just road, snow, and space. Then, maybe. 3 hours into the drive, I saw him again. Same man, still barefoot, still shirtless, walking at the edge of the road. But this time, he was ahead of me. I didn't stop. I pressed my foot harder on the gas. I kept my eyes locked on the road and watched him disappear into the mirror as I passed him. Still no footprints. By the time I reached the halfway checkpoint, a tiny metal shack with a snowplow parked beside it, I was shaking. The place was empty. No radio, no person in sight. But I pulled in anyway, hoping for a break. I sat in the car with the engine running, recording myself again. I said something like, I think I'm seeing things. I need to rest, maybe sleep. Little, I didn't believe myself. I wasn't tired. I wasn't hallucinating. I knew what I saw. Then I heard tapping from the back window. 3 soft, slow taps. I turned around. Nothing. I turned the camera toward the back window and replayed the last few seconds on the video. The glass was fogged slightly, but there, for a brief moment, was the faint outline of a hand, pressed flat, fingers long and spread wide, then gone. I nearly left the car right then, but something told me not to open the door. I stayed put for 20 more minutes, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. Then I drove. I didn't stop again. The final stretch was the worst. The last 2 hours passed like molasses. Every few kilometers, I would catch glimpses of him, not always close. Sometimes on the far edge of the tundra, sometimes near old poles. Lining the road, he didn't move toward me. He didn't try to block the path. He was just there, watching. And every time I blinked, he'd be a little closer. When I arrived at the research station, I jumped out of the car without turning off the engine. I ran to the metal door and pounded until someone opened it. A man, probably in his 60s, stared at me in confusion. "You look like you saw a ghost," he said, helping me inside. I didn't respond at first. I just sat down and tried to breathe. Told him everything, more than I've told anyone else. I expected him to laugh or to tell me it was altitude sickness or panic. But he didn't laugh. He just stared at me quietly, then said, "You're not the first one." That night, over bitter coffee, he told me about the others. A Russian surveyor in the 90s who was found frozen to death beside a stalled truck. with dashcam footage showing a man circling the vehicle for hours. A Danish tourist who claimed she picked up a hitchhiker on that same road. A man with bleeding feet, only for him to vanish from the back seat without a sound. Her car later crashed. She survived, but never spoke again. He called it Drogro's Path, named after some Nordic legend I'd never heard before. Said people claim it's cursed, that the land remembers every soul lost to it. Not ghosts, not hallucinations, just reminders, warnings, he said, of what happens when you don't respect the road. I stayed the night, slept maybe 2 hours max. In the morning, I planned to review the footage on my camera and send it to my editor, back in Copenhagen. But there was no footage. Not from the drive, not from the shack. Not even the last segment where I was talking to the camera in panic. Everything before and after was intact, but the critical 6 hours were missing, corrupted. The files existed, but nothing would play. No sound, no image. It didn't make sense. I always ran backups. I checked the second SD card, same issue. When I told the man at the station, he didn't seem surprised. They never stay, he said. You can see him, but you can't take him with you. I drove back with a convoy 3 days later, bright daylight, 2 other vehicles. No sign of him. I made it. Home safely. I never published the documentary. I kept the story to myself for almost 2 years, until last month. I got an email from someone I didn't know. No subject line, no body text, just a single attachment. It was a still frame from my own dashcam, from that missing 6-hour window. The image was grainy, distorted, like it had been captured through static, but clear enough to see my car, my face, and standing beside the driver's side window, his hand pressed against the glass, was the barefoot man, staring in at me, expressionless, eyes dark and hollow. I never shared that frame with anyone. I deleted the email. But now, sometimes when I drive alone at night, I think I see him in the rear view again. Never close, never threatening, just reminding me, not everything wants to be seen. Some things just want to be remembered.